Okay, welcome back, you coding geniuses. If you are watching these videos, you are going to be a very good programmer because these things are not super well known and they're kind of, I don't want to say they're secret, but they're just not that well known. You kind of have to dig deeper to find these nuggets. Okay, that's why they're nuggets. You got to dig them up. Okay, so in this example, you got to use your imagination. We have some kind of value here. Don't look at the bottom yet. Don't even look at that stuff. Use your imagination. This is a string I made, and it could be anything, but we don't know what it is. So sometimes you have to check if something is null. Sometimes you might be reading from a file or something or a database, and the value might be there or it might not. In many cases, you have to check, is it null? So don't think that this is anything that you might see in real life, because we know right now it's null. Let's pretend like we don't know that, and we're going to check if it's not null. And the old way of doing it is, usually you might do, if it's not equal to null, then do something. Let's set it to string.empty. And string.empty and null are two different things. Null means there's nothing there. And string.empty means there's a string there, but there's nothing within the quotes. Okay, it's kind of a weird concept, but you got to get used to it. Okay, so if you were doing this, then you were doing it what I call the old way. Let's get rid of this. Oh, let's keep it there for reference, okay? And let's walk down and let's say, and what we're learning here is what's called a null coalescing operator. But what you can do in using the question mark is you can set my string in the same exact way. You can ask if everything in here is true, then do everything after the question mark, otherwise do this. That's the way I look at it. I say set this equal to, this is kind of a weird looking line, right? The first time I saw this, I thought, man, this is weird. But what you're saying is true, then do this, false, then do this. Okay? It's that simple. So we're saying if this is null, set it to hello, man. Otherwise, empty. And let's run this and prove that it works. Okay? We're going to run it. Now, my string is null, okay, because we set it to null up here. And we're going to say, if it's null, do this, otherwise string.empty, and guess what it's going to do? Try and guess. It's string.empty. If you see double quote, that means it's empty, okay? Now, if this were to have a value, let's say blah, in exact opposite fashion, what do you think it's going to do? So if it has a value, is it going to do this or this? My string, hello man, see it's not null. That means this is true, so it's going to do this. So this time it's hello man. Okay, all that's good and fine. We understand that. If you don't, rewind the video. And let's take this same concept. Don't look at this code here. We're going to look at these two lines. Okay, now we're going to do the same kind of question, but we're going to use an integer. So in a different case, you might say, maybe you have a decision to make. If the number of dollars in my bank account is over 50, 55, then do something. Otherwise, do something else. So what we're saying is, pretend like we don't know what this value is because it's variable. And in the next line, we're going to set my new count. If it's over 55, then do this. Otherwise, do this. Okay? Now, so it's 50. It's less than 55, so what do you think it's going to do? Well, run it and find out. Isn't programming great? Because you can always just run it and find out. Isn't that awesome? Okay, so my count was 50. It was 50. My new count is 999. Because it's greater than 55. It didn't do this. It did this after the regular colon. Okay? And if we wanted to reverse that, you could change this value to, you could change this value and figure that out. Okay, so now we understand the question mark and colon. We are going to move on, though, now, and do the null coalescing operator. The double question mark. Now, forget all this stuff. We're going to check my string. This is saying double question mark. This is kind of cryptic looking, but it's saying if in one short little line, you can do in one short little line what you could do in 1, 2, 3, 4 lines. And that's why it's so cool. Even though it's weird looking, you're going to look like a cool programmer if you can get this to work and make your lines look like this, okay? So this is doing the same exact thing this is saying. This is saying, if this is not null, then set it to its value, my string. What we should do is, this is confusing. Give me 1 second. This is confusing the way I have it showing. I'm going to say my brand new string. This is a brand new variable, okay? Without knowing that, this might be confusing. So we're setting a brand new variable equal to my string only if it's not null. If it is, then empty. Okay, so up here, we set it to blah. So what is it going to be? Let's find out. Try and guess what it's going to be. It's string.empty, quote, quote. String.empty because it wasn't null. Now what happens if we do set it to null? We happen to have a null value here. We're going to run it. This is so cryptic, I'm not even familiar what it's doing. I have to run it to make sure. Okay, and now it is quote, quote. One more time, let's make sure. I'm going to put some value in here. Now we're going to run it. Okay, I had that messed up right there. I was changing the value before I even got there. That's why you have to be careful with what you're doing. Alright, I am not perfect. I make mistakes. So now we do have some value when we get here. If we run it, it's going to say, are you null or do you have a value? And we run it, and guess what? Some value is in there because it's not null. Alright, that's really cool. And there's one more thing I want to show you while we're here. When you're checking for null strings, let's get rid of all of this. You don't want to do that. Here is something you need to check. So sometimes, like I said, you'll get a string and you're not sure if it's null or not. You need to do if string.is null or empty my string, then do something, okay? You need to know that there's a string.is null or empty, and it will do else int I equals 4. The only reason I do that int right there is because x equals 5 is so you can put a breakpoint. So let's pretend like we wanted to do an if else, okay? So we're saying if this is null or empty, do this, otherwise do this. And the string.is null or empty does two things for you. It says I might be null and I might be string.empty. That's a really cool thing. It does two things in one. So you need to know that that's there. And you, my friend, have just got a nugget if you did not know that. There's also is null or white space indicates whether a specified string is null, empty, or consists of only white space characters. Okay, so you might have only white space characters like that, but in most cases it'll be is null or empty, so we're going to do is string is null or empty, and if it's null or empty, it's going to drop into here. If it's not, it will drop into here. So this is a very good way to check for is null or empty in one little string. And we could try it if you want to. Okay, so this is null or empty because it's empty. It's got nothing in it. Let's run it. Breakpoint there. It's going to drop in here because it's null. It's actually empty. It's not null. If it were null, it would also drop into there. If it were empty, if it were full, I'm full, it'll drop in the other one. You see how valuable that is? It does a couple things in one line. Now it drops onto there. Alright, that's your nugget for the day. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more and more and more nuggets.